Podcast.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films either current or classic. And this week we've got not one, but two current films coming at you. We're going to be reviewing Hocus Pocus 2. Available for watch on Disney Plus right now if you haven't seen it. It's up to you if you still want to listen. We're going to talk about it spoiler free for a little while, as well as talk about Bros spoiler free for a little while. And then we'll give you fair warning before we go into spoilers for either movie so that you can pick and choose your adventure as needed. But before we get into our films for this week's show, let me introduce you to my wonderful co-host. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, babe, how's it going?
Going good. It's going good. I'm glad to be back. It feels like forever since we've been doing a podcast. It's only been a couple weeks. I know a lot has happened, both movie-wise and otherwise. But it's good to be back. We got two new movies to talk about because we've been slacking for a week.
Well, we haven't been slacking. Will was at a film festival and we were busy doing other things, but our schedules have aligned, and here we are once again. And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great, actually. Like you mentioned, I just spent the last week doing a genre film festival. Saw a bunch of amazing world premieres, including a couple that have actually shattered my top 10 list. That's always a fun feeling. But aside from that as well, coming back from that and a work trip, I'm actually at this point where there are more movies that have come out in the last week, even outside of that I haven't been able to get to yet. It's almost like a what's the right word? Like an embarrassment of riches right now. I need an extra day or two in my life just to get caught up on films, and that's a good feeling. But an even better feeling is knowing that two of those that I've recently watched, I'm going to get a chance to gab with the two of you about tonight. So I'm excited and I'm ready. I'm ready to be back into the full swing of things, guys. I mean, bros.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome. As I mentioned earlier, we have not one but two films that we are reviewing, so we got a lot to talk about. So we are going to dive right in with the first film on our agenda for this week's episode. Jim, Will, are you ready for a little witchy magic?
I say bring it on.
Yeah, I put a spell on you, and Brad, now you're mine.
Oh,
I mean, you're gems, but you know,
we can share me, right? That would be okay. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about Hocus Pocus 2, completely spoiler free for probably about 10 minutes. And then we'll take the lid off of things. We'll open up all the spoilery goodness that will make up our conversation. It's up to you whether you hang around and listen to that or not. If you haven't seen the movie, you may want to skip away for a little while, come back for our bros conversation later. But that is entirely up to you. We leave that in your hands. If you are listening to the magic of digital tape delay, just remember you can skip around using the time index in those show notes as needed. So if you're like, you know what? I don't even care about your initial impressions. I just want to get right to the spoiler talk. You can fast forward time and get there instantly. Congratulations. If you're listening, live, welcome. Glad to have you here with us. I do see we've got a few folks who are already in the live chat. Be sure to say hello. We'd love to chat with you and hear some of your thoughts on Hocus Pocus 2. All of that said, here we go. Our review of Hocus Pocus 2. All right. So, Will, if you don't mind, give us a brief setup of this film and your initial thoughts. What did you think? Was this worth watching on Disney Plus? Is this a skip? Where did you come down on it?
Yeah, so this is the sequel to the Disney classic Hocus Pocus that came out in 1990, starring Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy as a trio of witches from Salem, the Sanderson sisters, who come back for one night when the black flame candle is lit. And if they're able to consume the soul of a child before sunrise, they'll get to like live. Um, but it's a family movie. Just like that could be like be dark as fuck, but it's a family movie. This is the
Now
sequel.
that's a movie I'd watch.
That's a movie I'd watch. So here we are, some 29 years later, and the story has moved forward. The Sanderson sisters within the city of Salem are not just like folklore, but now they're part of the town's fabric and their culture and their commerce. And one night, two young girls, teenage girls, who are a bit outcast and trying to sort of figure out their own place and their own power and all of that in the world. They accidentally summon the Sanderson sisters back to Salem, who now have a new plan that they want to enact before sunrise. So it's up to these new girls versus the Sanderson sisters in a race against the clock. It's fine. It's fine. It's not good, but the original, so here's the thing. The original movie wasn't necessarily like a good movie. It was just a fun movie. There's a lot of like objectively like not great things about the original Hocus Pocus, but it hit at a very specific time in a very specific part of the genre, and it hits a very specific part of like I guess our like nostalgia for those of us of a certain age. That we can look back on it that way. The biggest sin that this new one has is that it wasn't made in 1993 and we can't look at it through nostalgia lenses, right? Other than that, it's kind of the same-ish movie, but not as good. I mean, it's a Disney remake of a classic property, so you already know or maybe not a remake, but a sequel, but still of a classic property. You already know where I stand on these. A lot of times they're more interested in preserving brand than they are doing something creative and interesting. And that comes into play a little bit here too. The Sanderson sisters in the original felt a little bit like there was maybe some threat to them, even though it's like three hokey drag queen performances in the original too. That feels a little more sanded off here as well. There's less of a threat. It is more camp. That said, I think it's perfectly fine as far as like it accomplishes what it sets out to do. I think people that and I've seen this. I've seen a lot of friends who have said, you know what, I just wanted to watch something sort of like turn off my brain and have fun. And I watched Hocus Pocus too, and I got exactly that. I had a blast with it. So I think there's something valid to that. I've seen a lot of people have, admittedly, a more positive experience than me. I'm probably on the more negative side of the bell curve that I've been seeing, but overall, again, it does what it sets out to do, and I can't slag it too hard for that. I don't know. It's more of the same. It is what it is. I think you'll know right away if this is the type of movie you want to watch or not.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for those initial thoughts. Appreciate hearing those. Tony is in the chat, and Tony says, "Evening, gentlemen." Hey, Tony. Good to hear from
Hi,
you.
Tony.
Well, glad you're with us on the show this week. Jim, how about for you? So Will said this was kind of more of the same. It is what it is. Did you feel similarly? Were you maybe more positive? Where did you come down?
Oh boy, yeah, I felt quite similarly. This is one of those movies that I walk away and I think about after. I didn't really enjoy the movie, but then again, I really wasn't a huge fan of the original Hocus Pocus. I just didn't grow up in that era, so I didn't, that wasn't really part of my childhood. So this wasn't a nostalgic watch. And I forget, Will, whether you said this could be or couldn't be viewed as a nostalgia watch, because to me, I'm like, what is the value of, as I'm watching it, I'm like, what is the value of this movie other than as nostalgia for those folks who kind of love the first movie? Because you're right, Will, it is a lot of the same thing. It's a updated sequel, I guess you could say. Certainly, they tried to update it for the times and sensibilities of people now, but it's still got the same kind of silliness, goofiness, um, just quippiness of the characters. Um, and there wasn't just, I mean, for somebody who was not into the first movie and is not watching it on a nostalgia basis, it didn't really trip my trigger. But then I say to myself, who the hell am I to judge this movie based on nostalgia that I don't have for the first movie, right? So I can't do that. I can't. But judging it on its own, I'd say, if you've got, I don't know how to judge it on its own, because you're right, Will. It's just not good. There's nothing that makes it stands out as a film. It's not really saying anything that I could see socially. We'll get into that a little bit, but there was just nothing for me to sink my teeth into. So I didn't really enjoy it that much. Props to the main characters, Kathy Najimy, Bette Midler, and Sarah Jessica Parker for coming back and reprising those roles. It must take a lot of energy for them to get into these characters, because they are kind of all three over the top characters, and they put the energy in. I think they put the work in to bring those characters back to life for those people who wanted to see that. I think they got that. Like I said, for me, the movie didn't work, but I know for a lot of people it will work. So, like I said, who am I to tell people they should or shouldn't see this movie? If you love the first one and you're down for, kind of that nostalgia tickle and to kind of see them kind of do the same thing again, you might like this one.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for giving us some insight into where you came down on this one as well. We have another favorite person, oh my gosh, in the chat with us. Hammy is here. Hey, Hammy. He says, howdy, fellas. Good to see you, friend.
Howdy,
Hammy.
Hammy.
It's good to see you back.
All right, cool. So that's two of the three. I guess my turn, real quick, to give some thoughts. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I hated this movie. And this is not one of those, like, I'm joking to, get you guys faux riled up. Full disclosure, I did not like it.
You did not buy the soundtrack.
No, I didn't, and I never will. I liked the original Hocus Pocus quite a bit. But I think a lot of that is sort of through that nostalgia lens of being a kid when I saw it. And I was talking to Jim about this the other day. Growing up in a very small town, there wasn't a lot to do at Halloween besides drink in barns and stuff. And my group of friends and I were the kids who were part of the DARE program. We weren't going to drink until we were 21. So what did we do instead of drinking in barns? We'd put on Hocus Pocus, make caramel apples, and just sit around and chill out. There may have been some poetry reading too, because we were also into that. But when I exactly snap. But when I watch the original Hocus Pocus, it takes me back to those times, sitting around watching this movie, just having fun and chatting. If I think about the original Hocus Pocus objectively, Will, you used that word earlier, it's not a great movie, but it's become something that, I don't know, it's just part of my DNA. With this second movie, I was kind of hoping that they were gonna do something a little bit different. That maybe this would be modernized in a way. I was really looking forward to seeing the witches dealing with 2022 and the world that we live in now, because it's been 29 years since the original. And I guess we got some of that without going into spoilers. But I think this movie is very much a retread of the first film. It tries to hit a lot of the same beats. The jokes are fucking tired as hell. I didn't really care about the teenage characters this time around, whereas Binks and the others, Danny in the original, I don't know. I guess I just connected with them. there's some things I want to talk about in spoilers with regards to the new female lead in this film, and sort of her heritage or dancing around things, but the role she plays and what's going on with the Sanderson sisters, that was kind of new. It was a little bit different. They did take a little bit of a stride, and I do give them credit for that. But I don't know. It didn't work for me. I tried my best to leave my phone in my pocket while I was watching this movie. I tried to fight, that temptation that, like, oh, I should check Reddit. Let me see what's going on, because I wanted to give this movie my full attention. But I don't know, man. It failed hard for me. It didn't keep me engaged. So I'm really glad that a lot of people are loving this movie as much as they are. I think it's fantastic. If you want that shot of nostalgia and this is going to give it to you, then by all means, I enjoy this for what it is. But there were just so many times during this movie where I was rolling my eyes so hard I felt like they were going to pop out of my head. And I don't know, there's a little bit of dissonance there. Like, if I were to watch the original Hocus Pocus without the nostalgia lens, would I feel as positively about it as I do? I think the answer is no. And I think watching this movie just sort of validates for me that my tastes as an adult movie watcher are very different than they were, as a child, teen movie watcher. So, if you have Disney Plus, you're looking for something Halloweeny to watch. Sure, I think this certainly fits the bill. But do I think this is a great movie that's going to end up on my top 10 list at the end of the year? I very much do not think that will happen. If it does, the Earth will have shifted on its axis and the sky cracked open and demons fly out, or something like that would have to happen to change my view. So there you go. I'm Mr. Negative on this week's episode of the Movie Rights
I'm
Podcast.
gonna light the black flame candle the night before we do our top 10 list, just to see if like Hocus Pocus 2 arises from the ground and shows up on your list.
On the top 10?
Yeah. No, I mean, but I think we all kind of ended up in the same boat, just with different, like, I mean, maybe to different degrees, but I think we all kind of hit at it from a similar angle, which is like the truth of the matter is like, that's the thing about like these older nostalgic properties, right? Is that they existed in a time and a place that we can't remove the experience of seeing it in 1993. We can't remove the experience of seeing it at that era of like Disney's life cycle, and that era of our own personal lives, and that era of the number of options and choices that were available to us. There was like we didn't have the same nowadays. Like, camp is a lot easier to find outside of niche circles, and so it doesn't necessarily play as well today in a mainstream scenario as it did there. So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't think that it's wrong to have like non-objective feelings about a thing that you watched back then, because those experiences are exactly valid, and that's what movie is. Like, that's what movies are. They are emotional reactions to these pieces of art and entertainment properties that we view at these slices of our lives. That said, Hocus Pocus 2 struggles a lot because it doesn't benefit from those elements. It just sort of exists in its own vacuum, and I think that the flaws become all the more clear in it. There's some good things. There's some sincerely good things in this, but there's a lot of bad things, and I think more for me, there's just a lot of just sort of dull, neutral things. Like, I think that if anything, I would have enjoyed it more if it was bad. Like if it was like objectively bad for me. The one thing that I think does help this one for me, not to call back a previous episode too much, but I was thinking while watching this is not the worst Disney movie that I've seen this year on Disney Plus.
Oh,
I would, if gun to my head, I have to watch this or Pinocchio again, I'm watching this again.
I can't agree there, but yeah. I know we have our feelings. We both have, pretty low feelings about these Disney remakes and reboots and retreads. But I'd watch Pinocchio more over this, but that's, we can have that war later on.
Yeah, I don't think there's a war. I think at this point we're just deciding, what's at the bottom of the barrel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, so if you think of this, like if you take a step back and think about, okay, they're going to do a Hocus Pocus 2. There's nothing particularly wrong or egregiously bad about the filmmaking. Like, the sets, the art design, the characters, the acting is pretty much all the same as the first movie. So unless you've changed the story, unless you're doing something different, like out of the box with the story, you're just going to end up with a Xerox copy, basically, of your original movie. And so the best it can be is just that, just a facsimile of the first movie, and that's what you got here.
But it's a copy of a copy.
It's a copy of a copy, and you can revisit older properties and make them entertaining, make them say something, make them do something new without losing the core DNA of what they are. This year, a new Beavis and Butthead movie came out, and it's remarkably funny. And it's like it doesn't necessarily reinvent the characters. It's the same characters, but it basically transplants them into like 2021. And because of that, there are definitely some things where they are both out of sync with the way things are now, but there's some things that are very much in sync right now. So it's like you are reminded why you, assuming you like the property to begin with, why you like those characters, but you also get to see something new here. So it can be done. Like this isn't like a nostalgia is bad, old properties are bad at all. You can do it really, really well, but you just have to have a point of view and a reason to make it. And I think the reason that you make Hocus Pocus 2 is, I think the reason you make Hocus Pocus 2 in 2022 is because realistically the actresses are getting a little bit older and you want to try to get the gang back together while you still can before, it's easy to let another 10 years slip. And then all of a sudden, like the actresses just aren't in a position where they want to do any more properties. So I get why you would make this and why you would make this now. But from a scripting perspective, it just feels like you got to find something new to do. You've got to do something else with it.
Bring them back, but make them even more pissed off that they had to spend all that time in wherever they spent it. And now they're actually eating kids. Like they're, give it a little bit of an edge. To the movie.
Their edge is something that I very much want to talk to you guys about in spoilers. So maybe this is a good point to make that transition over and we can start there. Will, I see you nodding along. Jim, are you good with zapping over to spoilers?
Let's get anything we want to talk about. We can spill into spoilers.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. If you have not yet seen Hocus Pocus 2 and you care about your original innocence where the plot of that movie is concerned, this is your time to step away for 13 minutes and 12 seconds and then come on back for our bros discussion. If you haven't seen the movie and you don't care about spoilers, then by all means continue to listen. But if you continue to listen, you do so under your own power. Spoilers are officially fair game. So I talked about wanting to kind of chat a little bit about their edge. So in the first movie, and it's been a bit, it's been a year, I think, since we watched it and reviewed it last Halloween-y time. Weren't they like putting spells on kids and sucking their souls out of their bodies so that they could like live forever? They were murdering children. They were doing all kinds of awful shit.
At the beginning, they disappeared a couple kids.
So they killed the kid in the past, and that's part of like what got them hung. And then they have to. The whole plot of the story is they have to essentially kill another kid before sunrise by luring them using the magical song and then making them do the potion and suck the energy out stuff. But essentially, have to kill kid before sun comes up.
Right. Whereas in this movie, I didn't get the same like sense of stakes or danger for the kids. Like, yeah, they were, John at the kids and like trying to shoot them with magical bolts that Salt repelled. But I don't know. I wasn't as afraid of the Sanderson sisters, I think, as I was in the original. And I don't know, that's weird to say. I wasn't really afraid of them in the
Yeah,
original
yeah.
movie, but you know what I mean? Like the stakes were higher, they were doing really bad shit, evil things. I feel like this movie tried to like redeem the witches. So instead of seeing like all this evil shit that they're doing, obviously they're acting out in some ways, but we get a scene of them at the beginning with the stupid fucking reverend and like how he's like trying to break them apart as sisters, and it sets up this whole thing of like, oh, they're the victims, right?
Right.
And even at the end of the movie, um we get a fucking redemption arc for Winnie and her sisters. Winnie's like, "Oh, I want to be reunited with my sisters. I see the error of my ways now. What a world, what a world. Disappear into sparkly magic. Everything's gold and wonderful." I don't know. Like, is this I don't know. They
So
left it open for a third movie, but like what the fuck are they going to do with the witches now that they've been redeemed? Like, are they a threat? I don't know.
no. Well, and that's, I mean, that's, it goes back to, that's the Disneyfication of it. Like, I think unfortunately, what these remakes and these sequels have been doing, I think, as far as like the biggest sin that they've been committing, is they grind off the edges of their villains. Like, so we think about Maleficent and Cruella. Their stories have been redemption arc stuff. Even going back to Pinocchio, you take out a lot of the it wasn't as much he was making bad decisions as much as he was kind of like thrown into some bad choices, to make Pinocchio less of a bad boy, or Cruella less of a villain, or Maleficent less of a villain. And you get that a little bit here too, like the Sandersons are a little bit less of a villain here, which I don't necessarily mind as a choice, but do something else, right? And I think there's the DNA of that is here. I liked the backstory stuff for them as kids. I think that's the type of thing that could go somewhere, right? Seeing what these three like young girls, how they were sort of outcast and why, they became the witches. Cool, sure, let's do something with that. But then this whole like the reason that we're evil is because we always have to stay together never really gets super tested. If anything, if I were writing the script of this one, I would have some sort of subplot in there. I don't know what it would be. Maybe it's a romantic subplot. Maybe it's a something subplot that forces the Sanderson sisters to maybe have to pull apart for some reason, and make like the story of this one being sort of like the testing of their sisterhood. Maybe one of the sisters, like the Kathy and Jimmy ones, like, maybe I don't want to eat children, and they have to deal with that. Or the Sarah Jessica Parker one is just like, ooh, there's a lot of cool shit here in 2022. Maybe there's something else I can do with this instead of all of that. And maybe they all kind of have to go their separate ways over the course of this night and then come back together and fight some teenagers, whatever the fuck, I don't care. But that central theme of this is the thing that has to keep us together never really gets tested until that last little like moment that feels like such a weird little button where one of them doesn't get disappeared at the same time as the other two. Like, so that's my biggest problem with the film. It's thematic. It's not any of the individual elements. It's not even necessarily what the Sandersons did. It's just the movie did not follow through with what could have been its thesis statement from its opening sequences.
Yeah. I was surprisingly kind of on board with like the first 5 or 10 minutes of this movie. They had like a little scene that was actually like a flashback to even before the events of the first Hocus Pocus, I believe, right? When all the shit went down with the Reverend in this village, and it felt a little witch movie to me, like the Robert Eggers witch movie. It was like, oh, this feels like puritanical, and like this is going to get cool. And I almost wish they had stayed with like a prequel movie. But then they, of course, they reeled it all. That would have been cool, but then they reeled it all back again. And it just, and then we started seeing the younger witches when they first came together, right? The three of them, I think, as they were kids or as they were younger, or like young teens. And then one of them, the one who was, I forget the actual character names
Becca.
of the witches, but the Kathy and Jimmy one. I don't
Oh,
know which one.
okay.
Which one is that? But anyway, the young actor they got to play the young Kathy Najimy, they had to have her do the thing with her mouth, like really exaggerated, and that was really like throwing me out of every scene that she was in.
Mm.
And yeah, Brad, you had said you had you wanted to talk about like one of the main characters,
Yeah.
and how that was set up, and
So
how
here's
that was.
here's here's the other thing with that I had with this. So like in the first movie, didn't the Sanderson sisters get their power from evil? Didn't they get their power from Satan? Like the book is like this
Yeah,
really
it's an
evil
evil
thing.
book. Yeah.
It's an evil book, right? In this movie, Becca is a new witch. She just turned 16 and apparently she comes into her magic powers and the book abandons the Sanderson sisters and goes to her
She's a
so
white
that
lighter,
she
Brad.
yeah, I know, right? So that she can be a good witch, I guess, but like I don't know, man. That whole thing felt like I don't know, doesn't Disney have like 15 different like magic people TV shows right now? Like it felt like something out of that instead of like
Yeah.
fucking Hocus Pocus. But I mean, they did try to do something a little different. They had her as a new witch. She knew about salt to block the evil witch's powers. She was able to like zap with her magic finger too, and she got her friends to help her cast spells through the magic of friendship. I mean, I guess that's okay, but I don't know. It just didn't do it for me.
One thing I would have liked to have seen there instead is I didn't like it as she's a witch because she has this special magical powers. When again, going back to theme, because that's what movies are. Like movies are stories about something, right? If you've already set up this story about like this bond between these three sisters, I would have loved to have seen the bond between Becca and the other two friends be more important, and for it to be a
Mhm.
true like new coven, where they are drawing their strength from one another as opposed to the other two are helping their like super cool magic friend.
Right.
Like that's I think again that's these are just little things that you could do to just sort of make a more cohesive story, and that's all I fucking want. Like you can give me all the nostalgia bait in the world, just give me
Mhm.
something with a through line.
Well, speaking of through lines, we've got we've actually got two of them going into a potential third movie if they decide to make it. The cat at the end jumps up next to a box that's labeled Black Flame Candle number 2, meaning,
Yeah,
you
duh.
know.
Like, just start a whole new movie. Just have another widget or
Right.
whatever you want to call it,
And
MacGuffin.
then the other part of it is I forget the actress's name, but she plays Hannah in Ted Lasso. She's like the mother witch at the beginning of the movie talking to Winnie and her sisters.
Yeah.
And she is a bird. She's able to change her shape. Well, at the end of this movie, we see that same bird flying through the street with the new witches, as they've got book and they're walking down. So I don't know what they're going to do with the third movie if they make it. Um, Hammy mentions in chat, why not keep them as baddies and still be a bit silly? It worked great for Freddy. Yeah, I agree with you, Hammy. Maybe in a third movie, I don't know, there's an even bigger big bad and they have to summon the Sanderson sisters to help take the big bad down, and so they can still kind of be bad and they can
There
still
was that,
kind of be silly.
there was the mother witch, so or like, you got that.
Right. So maybe they all have to fight against her. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe something worse is out there. I don't know. I don't want a third movie though. If they make
Yeah.
a third movie, please don't make me watch it for the
We
podcast.
will
That's all
watch
I
it.
ask.
I
We
mean,
have to watch it.
we don't have to watch any.
Well, we don't, but we will.
I mean, if I was thinking about this, like, if they made a third one, what would I want it to be, or what would I want them to do with it? Like, with the assumption of they're gonna make, like, if that's the assumption, right? I'm with you. I would prefer them not make one, but do something different, anything different. You can do a
Mm.
black flame candle that gets lit, and maybe the girls are like, haha, I know what's happening here, and they stop it from being lit at the last second, and instead of it pulling the Sanderson sisters forward, it pulls the new girls backwards, and they have to do some stuff in like the 1600s with the kid versions of the Sanderson sisters. I'm not saying that's a good movie, but I'm saying that that's a different version than just the same shit that we've been seeing.
Right.
I do want to say I did like the Roombas. The Roombas was a really cool choice for, in the first Hocus Pocus, like one has a broom, one has a mop, one has a vacuum cleaner, and then in this one, one has a broom, one has a Swiffer, and one has two Roombas. I thought that was a cute decision. If you're gonna play with that space, like what's the more modern version of like a vacuum cleaner and a mop? It's a Roomba and a Swiffer. So I thought that was cute, and I appreciated it.
Well, and the Roomba served a purpose too. They sucked up the salt that was trapping the sisters, so it gave a little, Deus Ex Roomba for getting them out. But
so you Hocus Pocus experts, the original movie, were there songs? Was there music featured or songs featured in the first movie that were somewhat memorable that I forgot?
They did. Didn't they do? I Put a Spell on You.
Mm-hmm.
That was the kind of the big one. They performed for a bunch of the adults who were at a Halloween party.
There were a couple big ones in here. Obviously, the witches are back, based on Elton John's "The Bitch Is Back," and One Way or Another, I think, was another one that was in this movie.
Yeah, that was not.
And there were probably a few others too that I missed or forgot. But I don't know. I don't know. It felt like, it's campy, right? It's campy to the point of, Will, you mentioned it was kind of like drag show camp, right? And that's exactly the vibe that I got from the musical numbers, right? That it was just, drag show campiness. And I don't know if it benefited the movie experience for me.
It could have. Drag show camp is fun, but you kind of have to lean into the full experience of it, and I think this one borrowed from some of it, but didn't go all in. It did have, I do want to call out, like, it did have some awesome, even though it was just for a blink and you miss it moment, appearances by Ginger Minge, Kimora Hall, and Cornbread as three sort of like notable like drag queens in the drag world showed up as the drag versions of the Sanderson sisters here. And the most entertaining thing about this movie so far, honestly, has been all three of those queens have been posting a lot of their behind the scenes and on set and just like performance stuff on like the social media channels that they are in their Sanderson sisters drag. And it's a lot of fun. And I just wish I had that much fun with the movie as I did with like their TikToks about being in the movie.
Speaking of fun with the movie, one thing that I did find fun that I didn't expect was the return of Doug Jones as the zombie. He felt
Billy?
like the same. Yeah, he felt like the same fucking Billy from the first movie. And he's like, what was woken up was never put back to sleep. So I've just been in the ground for 29 years. I kind of thought that was clever. It was good to see him back.
Disney didn't put Billy Butcherson in the vault.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure they paid a lot more to get Doug Jones in this movie than the first one. His career has gone like this since the first one, right? And now he's back. They got him back in the zombie suit, which was cool to see. Where like when he came out of the ground, we're like, "Oh, please tell me they got Doug Jones." And I'm like, as soon as he said something, I'm like, "Yes, they did.
It's Doug Jones."
Yeah.
We got a comment from Steve Sosa. Ooh, a name we haven't seen in chat in a long time. He says, listen, if they make Beaches 2, I'm done.
The Beach is back.
I think I'm there with you, Steve. All right, guys, any other final thoughts on this before we switch things up and move on over to Bros?
Yeah, Hammy says the next one is Hocus Pocus 3, Hedwig and the Angry Witch.
Okay, nice. I'm back on board. I'm back in.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, I think that brings our Hocus Pocus 2 discussion to a close. We didn't feel super positively about this one, but you know what? not every movie has to be a winner, but a lot of people are still enjoying it, and it's spooky season. So, it's like this or Smile or, you know, other beloved Halloween movies.
Yeah. Go see
Well,
Smile instead. Go see
we have a
Smile.
new
I mean, it's a
Halloween
different.
movie.
To be fair, it's a different movie. You're not going to take your
Yeah,
kid to go see
yeah.
Smile.
We
Or
have
you could
we have
traumatize
the
them
new
for life.
Halloween Ends movie coming out at
That
some
is
point.
coming up. That is coming
Mhm.
up.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right, fellas, we are going to go ahead and switch gears here and move on over to our bros discussion. Just as with Hocus Pocus 2, we're going to talk about bros, spoiler free, for just a little while before we open up the floor to spoilers. So if you haven't seen Bros yet and you're like, I kind of want to hear what some people think before I go see this, we'll be happy to give you our initial thoughts, recommendations, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. So all that said, here we go. Our discussion of Bros. All right. So, Jim, do us a favor. Set this one up for us. What
Sure.
is Bros? What's it about? Did you enjoy this movie? Did you not enjoy this movie? And yeah, Will, that's why I grabbed a hat too, because for this part of the show, we have to turn our hats backwards and look as broy as possible, bro.
Yeah. Don't worry, Jim. While you're doing this intro, we'll spot you. We'll spot you, bro.
All right. Thanks, bro. Bro.
All right, give it to us, bro.
All right, yeah. So we got a new rom-com. Yay! We can all go out on date night and see a new rom-com. This one is about two men with commitment problems who attempt relationships. Sounds like your typical rom-com stuff. Whoa! Oh, wait, I misread that. This is two men with commitment problems attempt a relationship. That changes the whole thing altogether. This means it must be a gay rom-com. So yeah, so that's what we got. We got a rom-com about two gay men who have issues in dating and relationships, who meet and try to form a relationship. This one is written by Billy Eichner, as from, you've seen him as Billy on the Street, comedian. His videos, and I don't know if it's a show. I'm not sure about that. There might be a show somewhere, but it's not a show I've watched, but I've seen a ton of clips. And Nicholas Stoller. This one is directed by Nicholas Stoller. And this one stars Billy Eichner. So Billy is the main character, with Luke McFarlane as the other character. A lot of other actors. I think somewhere I read the whole cast was LGBT community. Well, for the most part, was from the LGBT community. So a lot of representation in this one. Yeah. We went into this one not really knowing what to expect. I had seen the trailer once. Weirdly, I don't think I saw we see a lot of movies week to week to week. And building up to this movie, I cannot say that we saw the trailer maybe more than one time in theaters. But we see a lot of movies now in kind of mainstream cineplexes, right? Local, Century, AMC, Galaxy is another one we go in. Didn't see the trailer much, which we'll get into a discussion later on about marketing and the movie's performance and stuff. I gotta say, I did enjoy this movie. Generally, rom-coms have to have a different edge in order to interest me, and this one obviously does. It's about two men. It explores relationship issues within our community, that being gay men. Now, it is about two cisgendered gay men having a relationship, although there are other characters that support it. But so I think there's there's certainly a jumping on point for a lot of the folks in the bear community in this movie. I think this movie's funny. I think it's well acted, well written. well directed. It's I think it's got its heart in the right place, and to me it felt like a genuine place, right? This isn't a fairy. We'll talk about spoilers later, but it didn't feel like for most of the movie that this was like a fairy tale kind of relationship that you see in a lot of rom-coms. I enjoyed it. I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. But yeah, it's in theaters right now. It's called Bros.
All right, Jim. Thank you so much for those initial thoughts. Will, how about you? Where did you come down on this one?
Thanks, bro. I think there's a thing about like that I want to draw a big distinction between the movie we just reviewed, which the Hocus Pocus 2, and that's there was a lot of like almost feels like damning with faint praise were kind of like the highest high points I could bring about that movie, right? It was hard for me to go full negative on it, but I was trying to find some things to like about it. And I feel like sometimes like that can dampen like a review, right? Like that feels like the same energy that I brought into like Love, Simon, which was a perfectly fine queer coming of age rom-com movie, but had some things that I didn't enjoy as much, but I was able to like the things I liked enough to give it a positive. All of that to say, I want to really make sure that I hammer home the point that that is not what I'm doing at all when I say that Bros is a legitimately good and a legitimately funny movie, right? Like there's sometimes where it's it feels necessary, or it feels rewarding to celebrate queer cinema because we need more of our stories represented on screen, and that's true. That's a true statement, period. But what I loved about Bros is that I can genuinely recommend it to just about anyone, maybe save for like a small child or whatever. But whatever. This was a funny movie. I went with a group of queers in a audience that was filled with other ostensibly queer people, just from the the number of rainbow paraphernalia that I saw adorning them, and for it not being a full theater, it was not a full theater. It was one of the loudest laughing screenings I've been to. Like every joke hit in that audience, and for me as well. Like not just that that was funny laughter, but like seriously busting out laughing to the point that I had to like order an extra water because my throat was getting a little sore from all the laughing. Nice. This is a movie that speaks to the queer experience with a mile a minute in terms of like queer references, things that I think it helps to be a part of the queer community to get. This is not a movie that does sort of like a drive-by of queer stuff. This is a movie that drives through the queer neighborhood. And I'm okay with that. This is also a movie that wears all of its rom-com references on its sleeve. I mean, the movie even references You've Got Mail, and it does definitely feel like sort of that era of rom-com. And maybe there's some people that would fault it for that, for not veering too far away from that formula in the grand scheme of things. But ultimately, this movie takes that formula and executes upon it well. The characters are very, very good, both the supporting characters and the lead characters. The conflict that the characters go through feels believable, especially for a 2022 queer romance, some of the things that we experience. Billy Eichner, there's been a lot said about whether or not he's a leading man or not. And I sometimes that discourse I don't enjoy as much because like, oh, Billy Eichner's not an attractive man. Holy shit, Billy Eichner's an attractive man. Like he is not under what world is Billy Eichner like some sort of like bridge troll who like, should be fortunate that we even look at him. He does quite well for himself here. And I think that as in this lead character, someone who is both neurotic, but also like believable for like, it works, man. I like this movie a lot. I laughed so fucking hard at it. I think this is really good. If you haven't gone and seen it yet, you need to go and see it. Like there are not a lot of comedies that hit as hard and as funny as often as this one does. So like, yeah, you can wait for streaming, and that's probably where a lot of comedies do best, when you're at home on the couch with yourself. But if you want them to keep making good comedies, go give money to good comedies when they come out. So go see Bros. It's fucking great.
All right, Will, thank you so much for your report, bro. Appreciate it. Um,
You're welcome,
as
bro.
for me, you guys, I think it's no surprise to you that comedy is weird for me. Comedies that other people just fucking die laughing at. I'm sitting there scratching my head like, that was funny. Like, I'm really jealous of their experience because I'm not laughing at all. So coming into a movie like Bros, which is, obviously a very deliberate comedic film, I was worried. And I'm very happy to report that I don't know what it is about the humor in this movie, but I was fucking laughing my ass off. You can ask Jim. Like, there were a couple times where I just had full-throated, out loud belly laughs going on. It. We can talk about some of those jokes and spoilers, but the humor here was snappy. It was punchy. It was
I think it's the
smart.
snark. I think it's the snark that kind of is the gateway drug to get into Brad's comedy head. You know what I mean? Like, if there's some
Maybe.
snark that catches, he might like it.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot of snark with this film. So Jim, that's a really good point. And maybe that is part of what I really enjoy, in terms of comedy. I felt like this film didn't pull its punches with some of the jokes. I feel like this film did a really excellent job of not punching down, which I think with comedy is really important. I also think that this film was incredibly heartfelt, which going into a rom-com, rom is part of that. You anticipate that there are going to be emotions, but like most rom-coms that I watch, and I don't watch a lot of them on purpose, but I've grown up watching a bunch of them, and we've done some for the show. Usually I don't care too much about the main characters. One exception to that is Long Shot from a couple years ago with Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen, which I unexpectedly loved. I thought was great. And this movie kind of reminded me of that one a little bit, just in terms of like how its two main characters were interacting, sort of the snark they had between each other. Almost like they developed this like code with each other, this way of interacting, this chemistry that was very, very believable. While at the same time, you can see that they're not the same people. They don't instantly mesh together and work together on every single level. There's some work that has to be put in to get there. And I think this film does a good job of kind of showcasing what that journey is like. Without going into spoilers, I really appreciated some of the things that this film kind of added to the mix of a rom-com from a gay perspective. It's in the trailer. The two main characters end up in a four-way situation with like romantic music playing. And and first you see just the two characters, and then the camera pulls back as two people are going down on one of the characters, and the other one's like, I'm gonna go. And I'm just like, oh my God, how true is this to like the gay bear experience or the chub experience or whatever, in terms of like, I don't know. I've had I've been in a group sex situation with someone that
what?
I know, but with someone that I had romantic feelings for and I wanted to potentially date. But here I am watching this other person with like other people having sex in front of me, and I'm kind of on the periphery, and I'm like, I'm gonna go. This isn't my jam. If I'm gonna engage with this person, like I want to do it one-on-one. Like this is just too much for me. So a lot of the experiences and things that happen in this movie, just I was able to relate to a lot. There's a big guy character in this movie who is really funny, and he we can talk more about it in spoilers, but he's not there just like to be the butt of jokes. He has his own agency and his own like sex life, and it's a positive thing. And I was really happy to see that because we saw the big guy in, I don't remember if he was in the first trailer, but I saw him in the second one. And I'm like, great, a fat character for Billy Eichner to make fun of the whole time. This should be good. And like, it wasn't that. at all. So
Nope.
really, really appreciated that. This is a fantastic film. It is getting some shade thrown at it though, because it's basically two cis white men, having a relationship. Yes, there's diversity in that, like, other characters and actors and actresses in the film, are more representative of the queer community, people of color, all of that. um I, I don't know how problematic it is to have two cis, gay men as your leads, but um I don't know. I related. I bought their chemistry. I really liked it a lot, and I think a lot of people um, would probably like this a lot too if they gave it a chance. But I know a lot of people are like, I'm not going to go see two white men talk about their gay problems. I don't care. So I,
That
I don't
exists.
know. It does. It absolutely does. And you know what? Feelings are feelings, and that can be valid. I just having this be like the first major studio produced gay rom-com to like hit major theaters like this. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. We should support these things to get more of these things. So it's unfortunate, but
Yeah, and the thing is it's definitely on that point, like kind of the representation of the leads. Like I think both things can be true, right? Like it can be kind of like a yeah, this does tell the queer experience through a very specific focused lens. Also, it's telling the queer experience in a way that hasn't been shown before, so we can be critical of one, we can celebrate the other, and both of those things can exist at the same time. Whenever we're talking about representation within movies themselves, often it's not the film, it's like any one individual film, and it's more sort of like the patina of similar films that create the trends, right? So what I would want to see out of this is like not like this one specific movie bust open some doors. Hopefully, like box
yeah,
office may say otherwise on that, and that sucks. But if the next five that come out are like two white gay guys kind of like moping in and out of love with one another, then that's a problem because we're looking at it as a trend, not for a specific movie. But for what
mhm,
this movie did, for what it is, I think we can absolutely celebrate it, and from the perspective of great, yes, and let's see what's next.
yeah,
Right,
I
and
agree.
we've had some movies already this year. Fire Island was one, right? I think that we talked
Hmm.
about, which also had a very diverse LGBTQ
Yes.
cast, and some of the relationships there were just not all, cis white dudes, right? There's mixed races. There's certainly some I think the lead was Asian, but like we are starting to see that stuff, right? I mean, if you take this movie and Fire Island together, that's a lot of great, two quality films, I think, that have great queer representation in there and some
Hmm.
genuine stuff in both of them. So yeah, I can't wait to get into spoilers with you guys. Talk about some of
And
these.
we also had, I think we should also add into the mix in terms of the major studio versions of these. We definitely, we go back to Love, Simon,
Hmm.
which that's the the coming of age one, and then we had and now I can't remember the name of it, but the Christmas one with Kristen Stewart that came out, and that was while not a major in theaters, it was like a prominent on Netflix when that one came
Hmm.
out,
Hmm.
to the point where it sort of filled the same niche as what Fire Island did on Hulu. So I guess all that to say, like, the doors are coming open. We're seeing more and more representation in film. Bros, I think, was the big litmus test for like, really seeing it from like a full theatrical big experience. Um, I want to see more. I want to see more of this stuff. Like
Yeah.
I've watched dudes, like I know we've talked about it here. I've watched so many queer comedies in my day, right? Like doing like screening and programming for queer festivals. Like you see a lot of that stuff, but it never makes it past. It never gets a chance to really get distributed and get picked up and seen by other people, like other queer people who should be seeing it. And so the fact that right now I'm seeing the majority of my queer like social media group all talking about this film and celebrating it together and saying, "Oh my god, have you seen it yet? Go see it. You got to do it," like in a sort of a viral way. The box office sucks on this movie, and that's awful, and I fucking hate that happened that way.
Yeah.
But this is a great movie for queer people, and
Yeah.
we should celebrate it.
Agreed. Well, how do we feel about moving on into some spoilers for this one?
Yeah, let's do it,
Yeah.
bro.
Let's do it, bro. Yeah,
Okay.
let's spoil this bee,
Come
right?
on, bro. Let's go.
Yeah.
Trip the top off this thing.
All right.
Oh! Ow.
Oh, Will, are you okay? You have a
Yeah.
giant can-shaped
Oh!
indent on your head from
Yeah,
trying to crash your White Claw can or whatever that is.
Oh.
You thinking of Cobra Kai, Jim?
I am.
Yeah. All right. Listen, spoilers for Bros are officially fair game. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you don't want to be spoiled. This is your chance to step away. No plugs this week because we're basically giving you a super stuffed, double-sized episode of movie reviews. So nothing to come back for at the end. Yeah, go ahead,
But
Will.
stick around for our outro because we might be giving you some of our social media links, which might go to some great plugs. So stay to the credits. Stay to the
That's true.
credits.
That's true. If you want to come back in 10 minutes and 45 seconds to hear how to connect with us on social, please feel free. But spoilers are totally happening. Here we go. Where do you guys want to start?
Well, I do want to. We kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit. There is group sex in this movie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think a couple of different times.
Yes.
It's a pretty, I would say, a pretty frank depiction of gay sex and the sexual component of a gay relationship, which is refreshing to see on screen. And this movie was an R-rated movie, right? Although
Mhm.
I don't think we got we didn't get any like hardness in this movie, did we?
I
No,
don't
there's
think we saw Dick at all.
I don't
yeah.
think we saw Dick at all, right? So there you
Mm-mm.
go. Nothing to be afraid of, straight men. Come on,
Yeah.
come and see Bros. I mean, we have no problem going to see your,
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I want to speak to this because it is valid. I have some straight male friends whose girlfriends wanted to see this movie, and they said they didn't want to go see it. And the
Yep.
reason they didn't want to go see it was because right there in the trailer, one of the characters says, "Do you guys remember Straight People? They had their run, didn't they?" And
I-
and that joke, it's one joke in like a rapid fire thousands of jokes. But marketing put that one in, and I think some people feel like this movie is like vilifying straight people.
maybe, but I'm gonna say this, Brad, and this is not to like minimize your point, which may be true. That seems like a red herring a little bit, kind of an excuse. I really think the reason straight men might not see this movie with their partner, female partner, whatever, is strictly because of, I'm going to say it, homophobia. They're afraid of what they might see and how that might make them feel awkward or uncomfortable or whatever. I really think that's the reason. And I don't like it, but I can understand it based on straight men that I know, how they might feel seeing this movie. They, some of them are more open, quote unquote, open-minded than others, but I don't know if they're quite open enough to receive this kind of content without making them uncomfortable. And, anyway, that's kind of how I feel about it.
But can't you invite someone in by making them comfortable, and then when they're there for the ride, then kind of push the boundaries a little bit? Like I get what you're saying, and I think it's a really easy thing to like, Christmas tree ornament homophobia onto, but I think it is a valid concern when the trailer for the movie is saying straight people are so yesterday. They're like if I watched a movie and someone was like, Do you remember Queer People? They had their run, didn't they?
But we get those. So my pushback on that was I feel like the same people who would say like, oh, I didn't see it because they said something bad about straight people. I didn't hear a single one of those people say, you know what, I'm going to stop watching the Hangover movies because the very first line of that movie is paging Dr. Faggot. Like
Mm-hmm.
that. So that experience for them was not important enough to keep that franchise from making billions and billions or however many millions of dollars that it made over the course of the franchise. I'm kind of with Jim. I feel like if you take that line out, I feel like there is a group of, there would be another line in that trailer that would be the new thing. There is another moment that would have been like the reason I shouldn't see this, and again, I can't speak to any individual person's experience, but I can speak to sort of like the overall experience of it. We celebrate the Bill and Ted movies where they go, whoa, agate, like we've seen these movies over and over again, and like let's be honest, like our straight allies aren't like, again, broad strokes, aren't stepping up for us the same way. So I get the whole like, it's great to invite people into a space and like make them feel welcome. But I feel like this is a space also for us to speak to our experiences and in a landscape where we've often never been made welcome, right? So I feel like the budget issues with this are probably much more along the lines of look, this is a rom-com that was released in theaters, which is already kind of a hard pill to swallow in a time when theatrical screenings are just overall down. Every movie, including some of the big tent poles, not all of the tent poles, but a lot of the tent poles are seeing like numbers where they used to be here and the success used to be measured here, but now success is measured at a lower bar because people are still getting back into theaters and such. Also, it's fucking October when this comes out. And so right now, at the same time that this movie comes out, people are starting their 31 scary movies between now and Halloween ramp ups. This was a bad time to release this movie for something that was always going to be niche to begin with. So I get it. And I know that there, I don't want to like diminish any individual person's experience with why they wouldn't see that. But at the same time, I'm a little more along the same place as Jim in that I feel like, to me, that feels more like an easy excuse than it does like a valid. Like,
I super get that, and I want to validate what you guys are saying. I just think we need to be careful not to label every like straight person who didn't want to see this movie quoting that line as homophobic, because I don't believe that that's
Right.
true.
Well, I hope it's not true. I hope it's not true, and I hope that those straights out there, that straight men out there that believe they're forward thinking and open minded, would be open minded enough to see this movie, even though there's maybe a joke in there belittling straight people. Like,
I mean, there's lots of jokes in the movie belittling gay people too.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Way more belittling gay people than straight people.
Right.
But it's what's in the trailer and what's the welcome sign versus, so
yeah. And the trailer didn't get shown a lot. And I think there's a reason. I think it's the same reason for that. I think there's a corporatized reason, why this movie wasn't able to be marketed very well. Like, how do you, it's okay. I think it's okay for most people to like have a rom-com, a kind of a straight rom-com, maybe with gay relationships in it. But to have like a full on in your face group sex, gay rom-com movie, and be able to market that to the general public, which is, I assume mostly straight. I think that's a tough sell. I really do. And I think the expectations for this movie might have been a little too high.
Queer sexuality is acceptable when it's a punchline, or when it's a threat or something that we're to be afraid of, like, oh, I don't want to go to prison and drop the soap, or what was that secretly a guy all along? There's our sexuality has historically not been taken seriously the same way. We don't get sort of slow, like like intimate, like, hey, we locked eyes, and then the magic happens type stuff.
We do, but
Outside of like outside of art house
movies.
movies, right? Yeah, like we don't get it in mainstream. Jim, you're a cat.
He's fairy dogging right now.
That's always going to be a barrier here, right? Like, and this is a movie that speaks to the queer sexual experience, not just as monogamous, but also as polyamorous or polygamous, or as being able to play the field a little bit while you're trying to find the one. And that's a tough pill for people to swallow. But at the same time, like I would also encourage people to examine why that's a tough pill for them to swallow, right?
Yeah,
like,
I think it's great.
Their upbringings and their media that make that so uncomfortable.
I think this movie is a great step, right? Unfortunately, it suffers performance, box office performance wise,
performance anxiety,
because it performance, because it took that big step. But I think it's an important step. And if we're ever going to get to the point where, gay relationship movies are on equal footing with straight rom-coms, we're not there, obviously. But I think if we're ever going to get to that point, we're going to need movies like this, and we're going to have to support them, right, by going to see them. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where we are with this, unfortunately. But yeah, it doesn't diminish the movie itself. I loved it.
I know we're kind of running down on time here, but just would like to call out a few other things that maybe we really appreciated about this film. One thing that I really liked, I kind of mentioned it earlier, was the depiction of the fat friend in this movie. So we got a fat friend who was snarky and also like sexually successful. He wasn't the butt necessarily of jokes. He's in a club scene with Billy Eichner, and he points to this, elderly gentleman that has a super ripped and shredded body. He's like, I had sex with that guy. And I look at that gentleman and I'm like, I'd have sex with that guy too. He's fucking hot. And it was great. Like, I think back to Fire Island, where they commented that the big guy like maybe had sex with someone. Like they kind of tried to allude to it.
That was a different depiction. Yeah.
Yeah. It was very weak. And well, anyway, I don't want to get super deep into that, but I appreciated this movie for like not only having a fat character, but like making this character like just as sexually successful and invested, maybe, as the main character of the fucking broy meatheads. Like, there's something for everybody. It was cool to see.
Yeah. And the other thing I liked about this movie is kind of the scenes. Billy Eichner's character is kind of the director or manager of a group that's trying to put together a LGBT history museum, a big national museum. And there are several, there are people on the board with him of all different kinds of queer corners, right? Of, lesbians, bisexual, trans folk, so I liked the fact that they had scenes of them like, I want to call it infighting, but kind of like the friction, right? Everybody wants their rice bowl, everybody wants their representation, right? And there is kind of that friction within our community between some of these folks of different corners of the rainbow. So I like that was put on screen in a pretty comedic but also genuine way. Like you totally understood the issues that some of these folks had and the way they were bringing it forward. And for a movie to say, hey, yeah, we're not a perfect rainbow community either, right? We have our issues within our community, I think is pretty brave, genuine, and I'm glad it was in the movie.
Agreed. And I think the movie presented something that feels very true too, is that friction both exists, and that friction's also very good because it allows like every group to be able to say, hey, I need to make sure that I'm still making room for myself at the table. So that friction isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be bad. It
It
definitely
can
does
be,
go
right?
bad. But I think the friction by itself is fine because these are a lot of different groups. Intersectionality is a real thing as everyone's at the table figuring out where they fit. I loved all of that. I thought there was like a certain poignancy to the way that they spoke to both the history of I mean this was the museum was all about the history of queer narratives in a movie that was a groundbreaking, in the way that it was presented, queer narrative. I thought that was a good like meta without being like wink wink nudge nudge meta. um I also loved how every single one of the people that was in those different scenes, um they all got to play sort of their section of the rainbow for laughs, but at no point was it really like a let's punch down to trans people, let's punch down at lesbians, let's punch down at whoever, like everyone, like there's obviously some inherent humor in just our experiences, and they got to play around with that even if it was in a lighter degree because they were support characters. I will call out that just like with Hocus Pocus, there's a very, very notable drag queen in this. Simone, one of the winners of RuPaul.
Oh no!
Oh, we lost Will. Oh, he's
Say it
back.
again, Will.
There we go. I can't
Simone
get back.
started. Simone.
So yeah, Simone, yeah. So Simone's a very notable drag queen. She won one of the seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race, and she's just an amazing artist. She has a fairly notable role in this movie. Not it necessarily like a super bit part. You remember the two friends, and then they say that they've invited a third for their third throuple, and then that character Marty kind of like pops into bed with them. Marty is the out of drag version of this like drag legend. So the whole time Scott and I, we're just sitting there going like, oh my god, that's Simone. Oh my god, that's Simone. Just like super excited that she was in this movie. Yeah,
You guys recognize that. It would totally went over my head, unfortunately.
She's a fucking amazing artist.
Yeah.
Any other final comments on Bros before we wrap this one up?
Oh boy, it was good to see Provincetown featured again in the movie. I really dug that, just on a personal level. Us having been to Provincetown years ago, it's still fond memories. It was good to see that. It was also great, Brad, like you said. The big guy got to kind of brag a little bit about his very successful sex life. I just want to know one thing before we end. Did you guys appreciate the very rom-com-y ending we got?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were okay with that.
Hell
as opposed to something a little different spin on it.
We deserve rom-com endings too. We deserve like those like and the movie again lampshades it through the course of like these like Hallmark movies that are sort of playing through there. It recognizes that it's schmaltzy, but it also recognizes that we deserve schmaltzy. We deserve like our moment of the queer narrative not necessarily being subverted for tears, but to be elevated as sort of like the kind of the sappy love story that makes everyone go, aw. Like it's the movie says as much
and
then
show
delivers
up at the museum's opening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
One thing I will say to try and put some things in perspective about this movie a little bit, you both mentioned the box office has not been super great with this film. I went back and did a little bit of research. J-Lo's big rom-com from last year with Owen Wilson opened with $7 million its opening weekend.
Yeah.
This movie has made over $4.5 million. So to have a rom-com with fucking J-Lo and Owen Wilson only make, $7 million, and this one make $4.5 million, and this is so niche comparatively. Yeah. I think that's something to celebrate. This movie was number 4 in the box office for its opening weekend. So yeah, it didn't make $22 million like Smile did, but I mean, that's a pretty good showing. And well, something you said earlier, I think this is going to find its audience when it hits streaming. So 100%. Many people are not going to theaters right now. I've seen a lot of people on Facebook and Twitter comment like, I want to see this so bad. I'm just not ready to be in theaters yet. I'll be very curious to see what the streaming numbers like this are.
I mean, it's a risk reward formula that we all sort of have to do. And I think if you think about sort of the average moviegoer, like, man, am I going to risk getting COVID, or am I going to risk getting the flu, or am I going to risk that for like the new Spider-Man movie? Yeah, maybe. Am I going to do it for
Yeah,
like a
fuck yeah.
rom-com that'll probably show up on Netflix next week? Maybe not, So, and that's nothing against like rom-coms or the movie itself, just sort of the general moviegoer will more likely go see the tentpole movies, and that's always going to be the case, right? Yeah, I mean, I think the disappointing thing about the box office is really just what it made versus its budget. That's the hardest pill, because I think there were expectations, or at least not even expectations, but I think some of the studios were sort of like waiting to see how this one went before greenlighting some things. And it's very possible that some things might not get greenlit that might have otherwise. And that sucks. But I do think that you're absolutely right. You mentioned like the home that it'll have on streaming. This is not the first time that something has not done great in box offices and then just went absolutely gangbusters on Hulu or on Shudder or on wherever, and then suddenly it did well enough that now its sequel's being greenlit or whatever. So I would encourage anyone that has seen it to keep talking about it and to remind your friends about it when it does hit the streaming. If they're not going to go see it now, watch it with them then. I think it's, a good movie fan is also sort of like evangelical about the stuff that they love. So if you loved this movie as much as we did and you want to see more of it, spread the gospel, spread the word.
I will probably start rewatching this movie every year during Pride Month.
Fuck yeah.
Sure. All right. Here's a funny headline to end on. You ready?
We're ready.
Bros sex scene used a $30,000 butt rig to simulate rimming, then cut it out of the film because White Lotus beat us to the punch. For those of you who've seen White Lotus, you know exactly
I have
what
not
I'm talking about.
Seen $30,000 butt rig to simulate rimming. I mean,
yeah.
Hold on, give me 1 second. I'll open Growler and I can get you someone give me 5 minutes. I'll get you someone to simulate that. Simulate air quotes that for real.
I'll take a third of that. Thank you very much.
Okay. 0.5 miles away says he'll do it right. He'll do it for free.
I mean, we have a friend with a rim chair that could just bring it over, and we'll use our new iPhone
Why
camera.
they needed a butt rig, I have no idea.
Can I also just say, even though I think Billy Eichner is really annoying sometimes, I did love him in this movie. But the thing that I really want to say is they didn't shave him for the movie, which I think is so great. I don't know. It was great having a hairy protagonist.
And they didn't make the partner, like Luke. No, what was the other guy's name? Was it Luke? Aaron.
Aaron
Luke
was the character's name.
Yeah. From the trailers, I thought he was going to be like a kind of an idiot meathead, which would have been a fine, like, oh, is this smart guy and this idiot? And he's not. He's an intelligent dude too. He just has a very different point of view than Eichner's point of view within queer culture. I like that. These were both fleshed out, real feeling characters. So
right,
yeah.
But
yes,
props to the movie for showing, this Aaron character, initially represents as a meathead, right? Mm-hmm. As a meathead, muscle dude, hot guy. But then as the movie progresses, they kind of reveal the character bit by bit. And I think that really is good character building and makes us, empathize with that character and makes him much, very likable by the end.
Absolutely agree. Well, speaking of the end, we have reached said end.
Butt rig.
So, we're going to do the thing we like to do here, where if people want to chat movies between now and our next recording, we let you know how you can reach out. Will, you mentioned earlier, you may be able to find some plugs, through our socials. I'm guessing you were thinking about Letterboxd there. So Jim, why don't you kick us off? How can people get in touch with you?
please find me on Twitter. That's where I like to, tweet about movie stuff and, maybe sometimes stuff in the news. My Twitter handle is at JJP Out West. Those are my initials, JJP Out West. And you can also find me on regular old Facebook under my regular old name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thanks so much, babe. Will, where can people interact with you?
Twitter, Instagram, at whatever cove. If you're watching live, you can see it on the screen. I'm on Facebook under the name William Lindis because that's my name. I'm on TikTok at the Movie Bear, and yeah, I did want to, Brad, check out Letterboxd. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, I just did like a huge film festival. I saw 25 different feature films. Couple of which are going to be in my top 10 discussion, several of which are going to be movies that are coming out in the next couple of months that you should 100% go see because they're really fucking good. So go check out my Letterboxd. Just search for William Lindis. There's a list of all the movies, the most recent reviews, and impress your friends by letting them know about all of the exciting new genre movies that are coming up by cribbing off of my list. Check it out. Give me a follow. Would love to see you on there.
All right. Thanks, Will. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. You can also find me on Letterboxd and Twitter at iBradPro. Thanks so much for hanging out with us this week. We had a bunch of comments in the live chat. We didn't get to read them all, but good to see you folks. And for those of you who are listening through digital tape delay, which is how most people listen to the show, thanks for making us part of your morning commute, your bike ride, wherever you like to listen to our show. We appreciate you letting us keep you company. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Hammy says, love you guys. Hammy, we love you
I'll
too,
be right
friend.
back.
Good to see you, bro. And we'll see you all next time. Take care, folks. Goodbye.
Later, bro.
Bye.